You know that moment when you realize your stash has officially crossed the line from collection to cache of chaos? Yeah, me too. And the thing about yarn stashes is they don't organize themselves. Believe me, I've tried. Today we're diving into the first step in stash organization, sorting and categorizing. No storage solutions, no fancy tracking apps. We're just going to make sense of this yarny mayhem. And before you ask, no, this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. There are many ways to sort yarn, and we're going to go through the pros and cons of each one of them. Color, weight, fiber, project types, leftovers. It all has to go somewhere. And of course, I'll show you how I personally sort my yarn. It's my new hybrid system, and I'm already very excited about it. So, bins of chaotic yarn, let's fix it. Sorting isn't just about making your shelves look pretty, although, let's be honest, that's a nice bonus. It's actually about being able to find the yarn you need without tearing apart your house. I'm talking to you. Rediscovering forgotten treasures. In other words, shopping your stash. I found this fantastic project that not only have I put everything together that I need, I already swatched. This is ready to go. How cool is that? It's also about making better buying decisions because knowing what you have keeps you from buying more of the same thing that you already have, right? It's also really great for getting inspired because sometimes you see one yarn next to another yarn and suddenly, boom, new project idea. I can't tell you how many times that happened to me during this process. Oscar is not wrong this time. Now, let's get into the different ways you can categorize your yarn. First category, sorting by color. To be honest, there's not much that brings me more joy than seeing all my beautiful Totally Nicole blues together in a bin. And yes, I'm admiring them like a dragon with treasure. Sorting by color is pure aesthetic joy. If you love looking at your stash in a rainbow gradient, this might be your method. The pros for this method, it's visually satisfying, perfect for beautiful display shelves, great for mixing and matching yarns and helping you see potential color combinations. The downsides, it's not really as useful for functional sorting. Knowing what color a yarn is doesn't tell you its weight or fiber content. You might lose track of what's what. Is it decay, fingering? I don't know. It's best for you if you frequently do color work and you need to pick out shades quickly, especially if you have a lot of yarn that's already the same weight and fiber content. Or if you just like to sit back and stare at your stash in admiration. Oscar, you're not getting your own bin of cashmere. Next up is sorting by weight. Sorting by weight makes a ton of sense because yarn weight determines the gauge, which determines the project suitability. On the pro side, it's super practical. You always know where to look when you're starting a project. It really helps with stash busting because you can easily see what you have in a specific weight. On the con side, you might end up separating matching colors or fiber types that you would rather keep together. So sorting by weight is best if you're a project-based knitter, like me for the most part, who chooses yarn by weight first. If you frequently substitute yarns in patterns, and you need to be able to select from an equivalent weight. Here's a quick rundown of standard weight categories. Lace, then fingering, followed very closely by sport, and just a teeny tiny bit heavier than sport, DK. Then, of course, we have trusty worsted weight, which is medium. Remember how much we like medium? And then just slightly heavier than worsted is Aran. Isn't this a pretty color? After Aran, we've got bulky or chunky. In the olden days, they used to call this yarn weight chunky. Now it's most commonly referred to as bulky. And finally, super bulky! Now, of course, none of these weights are written in stone, and there is no standard. And within the super bulky weight, the range is pretty enormous. In fact, they've even added one heavier weight after super bulky now that's called jumbo. I don't have any of that. Google will show you. Okay, Nicole, but what happens when I have lost the label and I have a partial skein lying around and I don't know what weight it is? So there's this thing called wraps per inch that you can do to help you determine the weight, or at least get within one side or another of the right weight. I have this handy dandy wraps per inch tool. Super easy to use. This one even comes with the legend that tells me how many wraps per inch there are in each weight. All I need to do is take my mystery yarn and start wrapping it. Wrap it gently and loosely. You want to snug it up so the strands are right beside each other, but you do not want to squish them. And when you've covered the whole inch inside the notch, we're going to count the number of wraps. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I've got 17 wraps. I look at my handy dandy chart and it tells me that this is a sport weight. And I happen to know that that mystery ball of yarn actually is a sport weight. So it works. I'm guessing you could probably make yourself a little tool like this out of a piece of sturdy cardboard. And for the wraps per inch information, if you go to any yarn on Ravelry, beside the weight, it will tell you the name of the weight and the wraps per inch. But I'm sure there are also many different charts available out there on the Google. I don't know, Oscar, it's not mentioned here. The next possibility is sorting by fiber content. Fiber type matters so much for how a yarn behaves. Wool is nice and bouncy. Cotton has zero elasticity, and alpaca is basically trying to slink off your needles when you're not looking. So the pros of sorting by fiber content are perfect if you have allergies or fiber sensitivities. It can help when planning seasonal projects, like keeping your wools for fall and winter projects, your cottons and linens for your spring and summer projects, and it keeps your plant-based and animal-based fibers separate if you don't like them to mix. On the downside, this can get really tricky if you have blends. Like, where does a wool silk blend go? So sorting by fiber is best if you're super particular about the fiber properties and if you switch between plant and animal fibers quite often. Okay, Nicole, but now I'm back to my mystery skein of yarn again. What if I don't know the fiber? Did you know that you can do a burn test and find out? I learned about this back in the 1990s when I was a dressmaker and sewing teacher. Did you just learn that about me? Surprise! When you hold a flame to the end of a strand of yarn, many different things can happen. It will burn like paper, or it will melt, and that will quickly tell you if it's a synthetic or a plant fiber. The smell will tell you things. Burning hair will be an animal or silk fiber. The smell of burning paper or no smell at all might be cotton, hemp, or rayon. The color of the flame and the ash can also hold clues. I found this great flowchart from the Hand Weaving Academy. The link will be down in the description box. I'm just going to give you a quick little demo on the off chance you think I am completely out to lunch. So, safety first. I like to use a candle instead of a match or a lighter, so I don't have to worry about burning my fingers on this hand. And I like to hold my yarn or fabric in some tweezers. The longer the better. So let's hold this to the flame and see what happens. See it shrinking away from the flame? It's really more melting than burning. That's already a good indication that this is a synthetic. Once it's cooled off, you can feel the burned area, and this one is definitely a hard bead. Polyester. This guy is my little mystery yarn. Burning like crazy. Whoa, smells like burnt hair. This guy is wool, and the ash just crushes into dust. Super fun, right? Now, I will say this, it's best for fibers that are 100% this or that. It gets pretty tricky when you're dealing with a blend, but it can be super helpful if you have a yarn in your hand and you just have no idea whether it's wool or acrylic. The flame will definitely sort that out for you, but please be safe. Oh, Oscar. Okay, next up. Sorting by project. This is a great method for people like me who tend to buy their yarn with specific projects in mind. The pros are it keeps your entire project quantity together so you don't accidentally use part of it for something else. It's good for self-discipline. If you see a ton of planned projects, maybe hold off on new yarn. Maybe. I will say it has worked for me. We will talk about that more in a bit. On the flip side, having your yarn set aside like this, perhaps out of sight, might stop you from considering using that particular yarn for something else because it ends up typecast for that particular project. This method is best for people who knit from their queue and buy yarn for planned projects. Also, if you're working through long-term whips and you really need to make sure you keep everything that belongs to that whip together. And because I already know you're going to ask me, the bags that I use to keep my projects in are extra large organdy gift bags. They're just about the perfect size for a sweater quantity plus a pattern. I buy them by the bazillions online. You shouldn't have any problem finding a reasonable source. Okay, our final category is sorting through the leftovers. How do you deal with this kind of a mess? Leftovers and partial skeins are tricky, but here's a system. Things that are helpful when dealing with these little bits and pieces are a scale, a nitty naughty. My friends with a 3D printer made me this one. There are prettier ones, but I like this because Claire and Ty made it. You will also want some cute post-it notes, maybe even with your name on them, and some handy snappy hair clips. And if you don't have a nitty knotty, of course, you can use a Swift, a ball winder, or even just your hands. Get your kids to help you. So you want to wind it, weigh it, and if you don't have the label, do your wraps per inch and a burn test if you need to, and then grab your cute Post-it notes, jot down the info, and snap it on to your tidy little ball or cake with your handy dandy snappy hair clip. Once you've done that, you're ready to sort. For the really small leftovers, like less than 10 grams worth, you want to keep those set aside for truly scrappy projects like amigurumi or mochi mochis. Mochi mochi. I have more, but they're hiding from me. I'll have some fantastic ideas for this group for you in the episode coming up in May. So just take your little tiny scrappy bits and roll them into tidy little balls. Sort them by weight if you know what they are or you want to, and put them into bags. When you have leftovers that are 10 to 20 grams, you can wind your own mini skeins. A standard mini skein is generally 20 grams. But that can vary. Micro skeins can be as tiny as 10 meters. So cute, right? Just wind them up all pretty on your nitty knotty. And then twist them up. And let them curl into a cute little skein. Of course, you can always wind it into a ball or a cake instead. But ask me how much I love having a basket that looks like this. For your larger leftovers, you can just group them together by weight to use in future stash busting projects. We're going to talk a lot more about how to store and label these guys in the next episode. Okay, noted, Oscar. All right, let's talk about my hybrid sorting method. First of all, I pull out any yarn assigned to a specific project and put that aside. I already showed you this example and the ones in the organdy bags. I happen to have at least 27, probably more like 30 of those projects all ready to go. The next thing I do is I sort my yarn by weight because that's how I choose my yarn most often. And then within each weight category, I separate the yarn by fiber. So I have a section of my wall that is worsted and DKs, and the wools are separate from the cottons and linens, etc. And then finally, if I have enough within each category, I organize them by color. These are my fingering, totally Nicole blues. It's not necessarily a perfect method, but it keeps my stash functional for me and how I knit, and it's pretty. And for a change, I actually feel like I know what I have and that I could find something when I'm looking for it. All right, sorting is the first step to a beautifully organized stash. Now, your challenge. Sort just one category of your yarn today, or this weekend, or next week sometime. Yeah, that's true, Oscar. That's an option too. Are you feeling motivated and inspired? Great. Boop that like button for me, share this video with a friend, and stay tuned for the next episode where we'll talk about yarn storage that actually works and looks good. There are so many great options. Did you miss the first 2 episodes? Here's a link to the playlist. As always, keep those needles clicking and that yarn under control. I say goodbye, Oscar says goodbye, and we hope to see you next time. Bye!